Hello everyone and welcome back to Causes Gaming. Today we have a bit heavier topic than yesterday, but still much less heavy than 2 days ago. Today is going to talk about something that I personally just hate, and that being loot boxes. As a new study claims that they have found connections between loot boxes and gambling. So let's take a look at an article that's coming from the Silicon Republic and is written by Calm Gori. Study claims video game loot boxes may encourage problem gambling. One of the first studies to investigate links between in-game loot boxes and gambling could prove troubling for big video game companies. And I just would love if that would happen. I have said my opinions on loot boxes many times in the past, but just to quickly reiterate them, I think they're essentially virtual slot machines. And we regulate the use of slot machines. We put an age, which is largely arbitrary, I will admit that. Some people could probably handle gambling at an earlier age, and some people could probably handle it at a bit older, or maybe could handle it. Some people can never ever handle gambling. That's where gambling addictions get born. So the fact that we now give even children access to essentially the same mechanisms is just so worrying to me. If there is one thing for certain in the modern video game industry, it's that buying a new game does not mean you won't be paying for it again in the future. With the advent of online gaming, and particularly free mobile games, companies realized they could earn a revenue from consumers by offering regular new content that you have to pay real money for. Yes. And that's the reason why microtransactions actually make more money than real game sales. It was something like 14 to 22 billion compared, if I remember correctly, when I last saw the chart. The numbers are getting truly ridiculous, and the gap is just widening. One way in which the companies do this is through something called loot boxes, where randomized content in the form of cosmetic items for the player's characters or in-game benefits can be bought and won by the player. In many cases, the player is capable of winning these prizes through playing the game alone, but they can also be obtained quicker by buying them. And yes, I personally view even loot boxes that are obtained by gaming as a mechanic that shouldn't exist. I would much prefer if games just said, if you do this, you will get this reward. The fact that the rewards are being randomized just encourages you to actually spend money. There's no other reason behind that. It's purely there for the profit of the companies. It doesn't bring any more fun to the game. It brings randomness. And with randomness comes grind. And with grind comes the fact that people don't like grinding. And sometimes they would just rather spend money. And no, that's not a good way to do things, companies. Critics of the loot box concept have gone as far to describe this as randomized winning as encouraging problem gambling, particularly among children. Now, researchers at the University of British Columbia have revealed findings that show players who are drawn to loot boxes bear a close resemblance to problem gamblers in terms of shared personality traits. And yes, you may be saying, okay, that doesn't mean that loot boxes are actually gambling. And I agree, that doesn't mean it. But just take a real look at loot boxes and just be honest with yourselves. You will see that it is clearly gambling. There's no doubt about that. Publishing their findings in addictive behaviors, the researchers developed 5 questions designed to measure excessive or risky use of loot boxes. The gamers, all based in North America and of university age, were assessed on statements that included, I frequently play games longer than I intend so I can earn loot boxes, and I have bought more loot boxes after failing to receive valuable items. Participants also completed surveys that are commonly used in gambling research to assess gambling behavior, belief about gambling, and risk-taking behavior, as well as new survey designed to identify problem video game gambling. When the scores were compiled, they found a correlation between a strong engagement with loot boxes and measures of problem gambling. 90% of respondents said they had opened at least one loot box in a video game, with more than half spending money on them. So yeah, I think from this article we actually cannot gain that much. And thus, let's take a quick look at the abstract of the study itself. So, the study itself is called Associations Between Loot Box Use, Problematic Gaming and Gambling-Related Cognitions. And I have to apologize to you guys here a little bit. I do not have the full study, and I have not read the full study. That is because if I click Get Access, it costs $40, and I will be completely honest with you, that is a bit too much compared to what I can actually spend on a single article. But the highlights of the article say, the majority of video game players are familiar with and have used loot boxes. Most gamers agree with the statements that loot boxes are a form of gambling. Risky loot box use correlated moderately with gambling-related measures. Gambling-related variables predicted 37.1% of the variance for risky loot box use. And the abstract itself, which is sort of the summary for the whole article itself, for the whole study, reads as it goes. Loot boxes are virtual goods in video games that produce randomly generated in-game rewards and have attracted scrutiny because of resemblance to gambling. There's no resemblance. It's the same thing, just in a different setting. This study tests relationships between gaming involvement, engagement with loot boxes, and their associations with disordered gambling and gambling-related cognitions. Online questionnaires were completed by 144 adults via MTurk and 113 undergraduates. Gaming and loot box related variables included estimated time spent gaming and monthly expenditure, the Internet Gaming Disorder Scale, and questions that assess perceptions and behaviors related to loot boxes. So as you can see, the methodology seems pretty sound, at least from the quick stuff that is written here. Obviously, if I could just go into the full study, I could tell you more. And again, I'm sorry I didn't do that, but again, $40 is just a bit too pricey for me. The only complaint I think I would have here is the low amount of people that was actually included in the study. A total 257 people that all or of university age were participated. It probably needs a broader age range and obviously more people. And hopefully in the future we will get such a study. But for the moment, this is the best we have. Most participants thought loot boxes were a form of gambling. 68.1% in terms of the adults that completed the survey via MTurk, and 86.2% in the undergraduate guys. A subset of items were condensed into an undimensional risky loot box index via exploratory factor analysis. In study 1, the RLI showed significant associations with problem gambling. Severity index R.4.1, that means 49.1%. And the gambling-related cognition scale R.518, which means 51.8%. Overall, gambling-related variables predicted 37.1% of the variance in RLI scores. Findings were replicated, though attenuated, in Study 2. These results demonstrate that besides the surface similarity of loot boxes to gambling, loot box engagement is correlated with gambling beliefs and problematic gambling behavior in adult gamers. So, this sort of makes it official, doesn't it? Loot boxes engage the same behaviors as gambling itself does. And for a simple reason. They are gambling. They're a slightly different form of gambling. I will not argue that that isn't true, but they are still a form of gambling. Maybe they are less bad than slot machines themselves, but they use the same exact mechanics. Blinking lights, great sounds, the chance to win, and occasional winnings that make you push for that additional expenditure of money because maybe next time I will get the thing I really crave for, whether it's the jackpot in a slot machine or whether it's that legendary item in a loot box. Both of these things are equally as bad. I'm sorry about that, guys. So, what can actually be done? First of all, more studies obviously need to be done. And for that, let's actually switch back to the article for a second. As the researchers said, support the view that loot boxes are a gamified feature of modern games. They also said there was a small correlation found between loot boxes and those who could be classified as problem video gamers. And the PhD student Gabriel Brooks said, our data involved adult gamers. There has been substantial concern regarding the impact of loot boxes upon youth. Studying youth exposure to loot box mechanism would be a logical next step. And hopefully that is exactly what happens. We need to get studies of how loot boxes actually impact young gamers. Because let's face it or not, the majority of gamers are young people. And while I'm actually starting to become middle-aged, I'm almost 30 at this point, the people who are actually being affected the most is the youth. And we need to find a way to protect them. And you might be saying, oh, but you're not really going for freedom of choice. And no, I'm not. When it comes to protection of children, I'm fully on the side of regulation. Regulation that is done well and isn't overdone, though. There needs to be ways for companies to actually earn money. And I'm not against microtransactions themselves. I just want people to be able to buy exactly the item they want, not a chance of getting an item they want. Because then it's not a purchase of what you want, it's just gambling. So if you liked the article and you liked the video in general, be sure to leave a like. If you thought I'm spewing really bad information, be sure to leave a dislike. If you want to hear more of video gaming news, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and see you guys later with more gaming content.